Welcome back and many thanks for staying with us right here on the #1 breakfast show in the country, Morning at NTV. Trust me, you won't be able to resuscitate your body's creative processes if you do not take a sip of what? Inspire Africa coffee. So please do not make that mistake before you leave the confines of your home. Another issue, you won't be protected if you leave the confines of your home minus wearing a face mask, ensuring that the hot spots are covered, the nostril and also the mouth. The sensitive spots are covered so that you do not inhale the COVID-19 pathogens that will disrupt your life. Please, you will die. 4.9 million people around the globe have not actually survived. 3,182 people in Uganda have not survived. So please, it's imperative that you take it upon yourself to protect yourself and your loved ones that you've left at home. In the interest of continued learning, yes, schools are pretty much under lock and key. The president says we need to actually ensure 7 million more people are vaccinated before we even think about reopening of schools. By November 1st, we had hinted or anticipated a full reopening of the post-secondary institutions. I'm talking about universities and other tertiary institutions. But the president says inoculations have been slow, vaccinations have been slow. Only 2.4 million people have been vaccinated against the target of 4 million before. But now the target has been increased from 4 million all the way to 7 million. So meaning there's more time and there isn't going to be reopening of post-secondary institutions by November. Meaning we need to first ensure vaccinations of 7.7 million people before even we think about even reopening of educational institutions. So what options are available? U-Lesson is available. You only need to maximize on the power of internet. We do have a lot of information that is on there on that app, U-Lesson. Just download it and you'll be able to get all the information that you need as far as continued learning is concerned. And as far as continued learning and for reopening of the economy is concerned, please clamor for the vaccinations as much as we continue with these side learnings taking center stage. My name is Romeo Busiku. Let's talk about social protection. What makes the NSSF a social protection tool or a center of social protection, yet its leaders are saying no, this is a provident fund. This is not a social protection tool, but rather a provident fund. Well, it's a lot of confusing messaging coming in from the NSSF. October, wasn't it August 6th? Yes, of this very year. And the October 4th, the MD of the NSSF, Richard Byarugaba, came out and said we have enough money to give out to the NSSF members if this law is actually passed and assented to by the president. But then recently, Byarugaba, the same gentleman, came out and said we do not have that cash to pay out the 1.5 trillion shillings in interests and also benefits that are going out to the 9,300 members of the NSSF fund. Patrick Katabazi is here. He's a policy advisor on the Uganda Parliamentary Forum for that is the Uganda Parliamentary Forum on Social Protection. They want to talk about what makes the NSSF a center for social protection, yet its leaders say it is a provident fund. Very good morning, Patrick Katabazi. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Romeo, and good morning, our viewers.
2 to 3 weeks ago, we did have this conversation on the NSSF midterm axis, and I did tell you unequivocally that I would have you back into the studio to talk about the same, because they keep on changing goalposts. We have money, we do not have money. It is a social protection tool. No, it is a provident fund. The viewer who is watching Morning at NTV today unequivocally wants to know what is the truth about the NSSF fund. What makes it a center of social protection? Its leaders say it's a provident fund.
Yes, Romeo, the National Social Security Fund has a history.
All right.
And the history is rooted in the fact that many years ago, of course, you had government. Employment was really largely provided by government agencies and departments.
So you're taking us back to 85?
Yes, before even 85. Independence. Upon Uganda getting independence, it was clear that you had two sets of workers. Those that were working for government and its parastatals and departments, yes, and those who are working for the private sector. So NSSF largely was created to cater for those that might fall out. But you also remember that NSSF deductions became very contentious at the time and were part of the 18-point program of Amin when it was that he gave.
Yeah.
So the social security structure was destroyed. And then in 1980s, when Obote government bounced back, then the NSSF Act was created. And as the word suggests, really, this is the National Social Security Fund. And in my view, this is a social protection fund, social security fund. There's no any other word that we can give it. Now, what might be coming out differently, again, could be a limitation of either the law or technical application, that in the current circumstances, you have money that is kept at the fund for a longer period of time. It earns an interest, which interest then is given, is added to a member upon hitting a qualifying age or circumstance that would make somebody qualify. Then they will get more money than they possibly did put in there. And that, in a way, would work like, in that particular context, would work like a provident fund. But still, what do we mean when we say social security? We are
the difference, yes.
Yes, we are talking about interventions that are public or private, that are aimed at addressing people's risks and vulnerabilities that come through life.
And one of those risks and vulnerabilities is COVID-19, old age and so forth.
For the context of NSSF. Because
the SAGE program.
Yes, because the reason why, and here I'm referring to the debate that was happening in Parliament at that time. That debate was, people were very prominent on that debate at the time. The view was safeguarding people in old age when they can no longer work. So there are also social protection interventions that also guard people against risks and vulnerabilities such as COVID-19. And that's how we had Nebanja money coming into play, the provision of goods and services in kind, posho, and bins that were being distributed. All those are also social security and social protection interventions.
So the challenge here, people are mixing it up.
So the challenge, in my view here, is that there's a mix-up, certainly, of so many things. And for Mr. Biaga,
money to help you in your old age, and then money to help you in case of vulnerabilities and shocks like COVID-19. What would be the difference there?
So COVID-19 wasn't part of the things that were anticipated by anyone, by any standards. And it was not envisaged in Uganda and all over the world that social security funds would be used for that purpose. What we have seen happening all over the world is that to address vulnerabilities that are occasioned by COVID-19, governments have had to come in, like they came in the Nebanja case and distribution of goods and services in kind. So we've had governments all over the world providing money directly to people, providing checks directly to people. But also in Uganda's circumstances, I think the public has never understood the role and power of government.
Or what they are mandated to do.
Yes, and what possibly they can hold government accountable to. Because what is happening now for them, when we had a pandemic, people's focus was on, oh, we have money which is seated on NSSF that we can access to address some of our short-term challenges. And of course, the trade union leaders jumped on it. And all of a sudden, we have this song of medium-term access. Medium-term access has been there in terms of social security funds for other countries as well. And even in the previous, because this is a newer version, even previously, that was debated in medium-term access. But the spirit of medium-term access was to cater for people who would then make contributions under the voluntary section. So it was envisaged that if you are making voluntary contributions, up to a certain point, you can be allowed to withdraw part of the contributions. I hate to call them savings, because I don't think they are. Then possibly also take on a mortgage, take on so many things. So as to promote people, for example, in the informal sector or others who would want to be very creative with the part of the money that they are contributing. But it was not extending to mandatory contributions, because then mandatory contributions would be made to achieve a particular long-term objective. But it seems to be the case that the trade union leaders, I think, made the case, one would say better case, or packaged the message better. And Parliament did approve that, kicked out that particular component of tagging midterm access to voluntary contributions to now general, that if you have your money seated there and you have made 45 years, or you have saved for continuously for 10 years, then that you could line up and get your 20%. And that what has been very contentious. And I like to think that President Museveni has been very consistent on this message. He's been possibly maybe the one man standing between these people agitating for this and
you know, before all this, you were saying, you know, how best can these people access this 20%? But then right now the conversation is the money even there? You see, they were planning to dole out some 932 billion Uganda shillings in form of interest to their members. Now they have to dole out or cough out an additional 902 billion Uganda shillings. That's roughly some 1.8 trillion Uganda shillings or 1.5 trillion Uganda shillings in members' interests, and also the benefits to the claimants, the 9,300 claimants in that regard. So how come a fund that is worth 15.5 trillion Uganda shillings can't even pay out 1.5 trillion shillings?
The problem is much bigger than that.
All right.
There are people who are qualifying under normal circumstances,
All right.
getting 55 years and getting their benefits. So you have not factored them into account.
All right.
Then you should factor in the issue of interest that was recently awarded, and then factor in what would be the 20% if people, all of them lined up to get it. So the 900 billion. And so if you put it together, I would want to say that in my own experience, that NSSF has the money. But the question that I see that is very critical, that is confusing people, is are they ready by the fall of the hammer to produce this money? And my view is that it would be very challenging. And in case they did it, it has adverse implications on the fund in many ways. Because
so you agree with the president when he says it will kill the fund?
Absolutely. Because remember now that NSSF is a long-term fund.
Indeed.
Because it is targeting old age, 55.
Yeah.
So meaning that if you got into full payment at 20 years, that would mean that you have 35 years
of
savings, so to speak. And almost about 70% of that would be money that somebody will be willing to hold and invest for more than 30 years. And we also know, if for example you're holding money on fixed deposit accounts, on treasury bills and rather on bonds, so to speak, the longer they are in terms of maturity, the more interest that you earn. So you are now then saying that the NSSF, which has made these long-term commitments, get us the money, cancel the commitments, get us the money, and then we receive the money. So what will happen is that you possibly will get the money, but the fund might be adversely affected. And when then it does, you won't still be this other type of person who said, okay, last year or this year you gave us 12%, so now we are seeing the percentage going down to 5%.
No, in reality, Patrick
like
Katabazi, the viewer is really confused. 15 trillion Uganda shillings, and you're subtracting only 1.5 trillion Uganda shillings. How does it kill the fund?
It does. How much money of that is sitting in the Pension Tower building? How much of that money is sitting in the Ruoa estate?
But remember, Patrick Katabazi, this is a fund that is making 120 billion shillings every month. So if you ask
how
from
much
January
money
up to now,
how much money does NSSF pay out every month for qualifying beneficiaries?
I see.
So you have to strike a balance. Every month, NSSF pays out money. How much of it does it pay out every year for? So you have to balance.
Indeed.
So it has a and this is what happens, of course, for organizations as
Yes,
well.
Patrick.
That every year you make a projection. Project number one would be how much money will NSSF be able to collect in terms of contributions
Indeed.
from members. You state the figure. How much money, based on our experience, do we project to spend to pay out qualifying beneficiaries? How much money then do we reserve for investment? How much money do we pay in interest that has been declared by the minister? All that has to be taken into consideration. And that's why, for me, if Mr. Byarugaba comes up and says that there is no money, he technically would be right. But I also know that there will be money anyway, except that, for me, what I'm saying, and what the president has been saying for quite some time, is that we need to now manage our expectations. What type of the NSSF National Social Security Fund do we need to have?
So meaning, are the leaders telling us that we need better or have conversations on more options on what we need as far as social protection tools are concerned? Are the leaders telling us that we need more options in terms of social protection?
Yes, we need.
NSSF?
Yes, we need. And if you recall, we've been having a debate about liberalization of liberalization of retirement benefits.
Yes.
And at some point, of course, then we said, okay, let's preserve the National Social Security Fund, but also give leeway for other private players to come into the market. And one of the key proposals was that we need then to disband the current public service pension scheme and also make it contributory. So that on one hand, we don't have, because you see, we who are in the private sector, we are not only paying social security for ourselves, but we're also paying social security for civil servants because they get that money from our taxes. Yet ordinarily they are supposed to also be making their own contributions. But then that would also mean that our NSSF would transform also into a pension, into a pension fund. And what I think is also lacking in our social security or the National Social Security Fund is again that, which is happening in other countries, is that you get money when you qualify. You've had the studies that over 80% of them within 6 months they are home and dry. So it tells you that we need to refocus our thinking on social security.
You see, even Richard Biarogaba, I think, is not, adamant not to release this money, but he says even though we were to dole out this money, it wouldn't be sufficient enough to help these individuals pull out of the trouble that has befallen them as a result of COVID-19. He says 95 of the savers with the fund have less than 50 million Uganda shillings, and 75% of those have only 10 million Uganda shillings. So 20% of 10 million would largely go to 2 million Uganda shillings. And he says it's little money, it wouldn't go a long way in helping these individuals alleviate their suffering. But is that a reason enough not to give people their money? We are talking about people who are really, really struggling under COVID-19. They could even take 100K. So 2 million Uganda shillings and 100K, that's a big difference. They should receive this money.
Yeah, so we have different schools of thought regarding that. And here I'm looking at the context of the social protection for old age.
Yes.
Now, at 45 or at 40, where I am bankable.
Yes.
Meaning that under some circumstances, I can go to the bank and get money.
Indeed.
I'm insurable, I can get insurance. Beyond 60, it becomes extremely difficult to get insurance. I am employable. And in fact, I can go to my neighbor or my friend and say I want 100,000 and I get it because somebody knows I'm energetic. I can go and get it back.
Indeed.
Think about a situation when you sacrifice. When you're still working, employable, and then you eat your benefits at this point, no matter how small they can be, think about a situation that will happen many years later. So that's why we need a very, very serious reform. It may not necessarily be about getting the money that is in NSSF right now. It may be about even the little that you could have at 60. What are you going to do with it? What other service that NSSF is providing? Investment at value services, other enhancements that could also come along the way. But also to answer your question directly, it is actually not that many people, I could be wrong though, but it is not that many people want to get the 20% so badly for the sake of it. There are three things that I see. One is trust. Second one is trust. The third one is trust.
I see.
Some people are saying, okay, yes, the 20% affords us an opportunity of getting our money now because we do not know what will ever become of it. It could possibly be that when we clock that 50, that money is no longer there. And you know, what brings some of those suspicions is also because of the manner in which people who are leading this discussion are handling. Somebody is saying that we have money to pay tomorrow, they are saying we don't have the money. So it creates a lot of suspicion. Then you have social security is the matter that is responsible it is the matter that falls under the docket of
you have to be
Ministry of Labour.
concerned as a member if you have a president who is saying, no, this social protection to the NSSF shouldn't be managed by the Ministry of Gender. It should rather be managed by the Ministry of Finance. Yes. So you have people like Wilson Owere who are saying, then transfer the workers from the Gender Ministry and take them to the Finance Ministry. Is that a trust issue you're talking about?
Yes, all that form part of the quantum of trust issues that we are seeing happening in our discussions. People said, okay, but now, if these are worker issues, why do you want to transfer them to Ministry of Finance?
I see.
And what is the trick about it? Somebody will say that Ministry of Finance does not do investments. We are hiring people at NSSF to do investments. They can outsource if they so wish. What is required of Ministry of Finance or possibly Ministry of Gender is supervision. And by the way, if they said that it is the Ministry of Finance that has expertise, we are talking about one government. Why can't they get them and put them there where they are supposed to be? So for me, the issue of trust, by the way, is playing so much into the 20% midterm access rather than the vulnerability or rather than the need of it, looking at some of the numbers that you possibly have just read. And it is something that the leaders at that level need to start rectifying. You're saying that you can pay today, tomorrow you're saying you can't. You're saying there is money, tomorrow you're saying there is no money. You're saying, okay, this fund should live where it is, it should go the other side. You have had other scandals that have happened. Some people are saying, okay, 20% today is better than 100% in the next 10 years.
Indeed.
And that is also becoming part of our debate, which I think needs also to be corrected.
Let's talk about the SAGE program. How about the SAGE program for old people? How does it cope right now? And are there any plans to lower the age for access?
Yes, on the International Day of Older Person, that was on 1st of October, the President did say that it is very important that that age is revised. In any case, by the way, under the pilot program in 2011, the starting age was 65. But because of limited resources, now that a compromise was made, let's reach everywhere in every district and then have the age raised with a plan in 5 years to progressively review it and get it back to 65. So the President made that commitment, and it is the right thing to do in my view. But if we mishandle the question relating to NSSF and opening up of the pension space in Uganda, then we might have Uganda reach a level where it may never even afford programs such as SAGE. You know what happens? I am going to get to 55 years, 65, will possibly not get my benefits because I've eaten them way before. What I have is not significant. Within 6 months, I've blown it up. Then I'll be extremely vulnerable. And you know what the song I'll be singing?
No.
Government, Etuyambi.
I see.
And then possibly some of those will end up being now candidates for SAGE. Yet here we are saying, let us have a life cycle approach that tracks vulnerabilities from when somebody is born, youthful stage, when they get into employment, open up these social security opportunities, people get money, they can save, people which they love, or they can contribute.
If you're to link this to the SAGE program, Patrick Katabaz, if I'm allowed 20% midterm access now, I'll be in a better position having invested earlier, so that when I retire, I don't clamor for the SAGE program. The 25,000 Uganda shillings, I've already invested some of my NSSF money. But if I get that money in a lump sum, which is going to be taxed, by the way, there's a proposal to tax the benefits at the end of the day, yes, I would spend that money in 6 months and it would be finished. Then I'll be clamoring for 25,000 Uganda shillings from the SAGE program, which is not enough.
If you have worked for 10 years, getting 95%, making a contribution of 5%, you have not invested 95%, it is unlikely that the 20% of the 5% would certainly come to your rescue. And by the way, this might be very disappointing to some of our listeners. Social security funds are never meant for investment, so to speak. It can become another advantage, but ordinarily they are supposed to smoothen incomes when you are no longer working, when you are incapable because of family, because of old age. And that then small money, that's why in any case they're supposed not to even be a lot of money. It's supposed to be small within the pension perspective. It is supposed to be small and regular, coming every time. Small, but comes to smoothen your income and consumption so that you can be able to live by. So, but if you find that your benefits are bigger because you held a significant position when you're employed, then you can use part of that to invest. But the primary objective would be to smoothen your income and consumption.
Failure to dole out this money looks like the leaders simply want to appease the corporate bond market, yet they do not know that they are actually disappointing the Ugandans at large, who would have actually been in a better position by accessing this money. Are we just appeasing the corporate bond markets by refusing to dole out this money or sell the bonds we had invested in?
Okay, well, I don't know whether they are appeasing them, because you see what is happening is that if I invest in a bond at Bank of Uganda, I'm not appeasing anybody. I am making an investment.
When you sell those bonds?
Yeah. I'm making an investment. So when I sell, when I liquidate or withdraw, so to say, from the bond before it matures, it is a disservice, it is a disinvestment on my side, because I'm losing the benefits that would have accrued in the long-term perspective. I am getting then less money in some cases, by the way. Some of the bonds have conditions that if you have invested, let's say, let me give an example, of 10 million, and you are going to withdraw it before maturity, depending on how you got it, whether it was discounted or not, you get much less than you invested in.
But the money you're getting to invest in these bonds is coming from an employee at some point who lost their job, meaning they're not actually contributing to the NSSF fund anymore. So you're refusing to give this person their money to find other forms of employment through which it could be able to remit again to the fund. Don't you think they are losing by refusing to dole out this money? Because some of these employees are no longer in the job market, and by getting this money, they would get back into the job market and remit more to the NSSF.
Okay, there's also that perspective. But you see, the whole thing is that it is not proper, technically,
I see,
to look at NSSF or any other social security fund from an individual perspective.
I see.
It's a pool. You are all pooling resources or pooling contributions together to make a bigger investment that can get a bigger return, that then if you split, it makes possibly one's total amount of money there much better. Because you see, whereas there are some people who are saying, okay, we need 20% withdraw, there are some people like me who are saying, if actually you allowed that to happen, then my contributions, my benefits that I'm expecting will actually then dwindle. And for me, then possibly I will not like it. I don't want it. So there is that to say, I want to get my 20% so that I can invest. I have lost employment so that I can get back on the feet. For me now, unemployment is a government of Uganda's question to address.
Indeed.
The government of Uganda, every financial year, it is required by the Public Finance Management Act to provide information on how many people got into the job market, how many people possibly were affected arising up, and the strategies that government is putting in place to deal with those problems that are highlighted in the employment section. So for me, let us not mix issues, because if I get backache and I want NSSF to pay, if my children are not getting school fees for the term and I want NSSF to pay, if I get headache, NSSF has to pay. If I get problems at my circle level and I want to go to NSSF to pay, then we are creating something that is meaningless.
Then, Patrick Katabazi, before I let you go in a minute, we do know that, yes, 3,182 people have died as a result of COVID. Now, the people whom Richard Byarugaba wants to give this money range between 9,300. So if you are to say that part of the 3,000 people who have died because of COVID-19 were members of the NSSF. These are people who are not going to benefit from their money 20 years from now. Their family members need the money now to actually, resuscitate their livelihoods, because the person who died was the breadwinner and the person remitting to the NSSF. Isn't this a matter of life and death and not actually accruing savings at the end of the day?
Yes. So, but NSSF doesn't work that way. When you die, even if you have saved or you have made, contribution, that's the correct word. If you made contributions to NSSF and you die within 1 year, your family members, once they get the documents that are required, letters of administration, they just line up and get their money back. And it is very fast. And that's why for me, I'm always confident that there's money at NSSF in a sense, that I have not had many stories of people who are saying we made applications and 6 months down the road, we have not received the money. So if you know that you lost someone who was contributing to NSSF, then approach NSSF and get your money back. It is not subjected to this long-term thing of 55 years.
Patrick Kataba, the policy advisor, Uganda Parliamentary Forum on Socio Protection. We were demystifying some of the misconceptions that are befalling the 20% midterm access of the NSSF funds in that regard. They had anticipated to pay out 932 billion Uganda shillings in interests, that is to their members. Now with this new bill, they are going to be paying out 902 billion Uganda shillings. In total, that is around 1.5 trillion Uganda shillings out of, yes, a fund that is worth 15.5 trillion Uganda shillings. Let's put that conversation to rest and take a break. We'll be right back with more information. Keep it